All right, it is exactly 3:30, so good afternoon. Today, we're diving headfirst into the dynamic realm of data with the introduction to the California Educator Reporting System, also known as CERS. This session is about understanding how to access the data that will inform your data-driven decisions. And if you want to learn all about the system that gives you early access to student assessment data, you are in the right place. This training session, brought to you by the California Department of Education, is designed for teachers who have students rostered in the system and other LEA staff who are interested in using CERS. This may include any staff who has access to CERS but does not have an administrator role responsible for managing users or rostering students. Before I hand you off to our very knowledgeable presenters, I want to address a few housekeeping items. First up, while all are welcome to join us today, we do want to note that a different CERS training session designed for coordinators and administrators is available. So if you're responsible for managing users at your site or district, you'll want to check out the other session, which we'll touch on in a few slides. Second, if you are in the right place, but you're unsure as to whether you have access to CERS, do not worry. Our training today will use a training tool that mimics the live CERS environment, so no one will be left behind and everyone will leave with basic CERS understanding. Third, all participants are muted. Therefore, in order to submit your questions during the presentation, you may use the Q&A feature in Zoom. And the Q&A feature is found near the chat feature here in Zoom, usually down at the bottom. You can submit your questions through the Q&A feature at any point during the training, and we're going to be stopping along the way to answer those. Next up, a copy of today's resource guide was sent to you via email. And if you haven't received it or need to access it again, the URL has been placed in the chat box. Clicking the URL will take you to a document in a folder that you can download and make a copy of your own in your own Google Drive or download and use as a Word doc on your own desktop. There's no edit access from the link that we shared, so you'll have to make your own copy first. We also want to call out that a link to the PowerPoint can be found in your resource guide. And lastly, we will be recording today's presentation. In about 2 weeks, the recording will be posted and will be found through the All Trainings and Recordings selected search feature in the upcoming and on-demand trainings webpage. The link to that will be also in your resource guide. All right, I'm Amy Myers and I work for the Sacramento County Office of Education, and I'll be your producer for this training. The session is actually led by your excellent trainers who have a lot of experience with CERS. Today, your trainers will be Teresa Blanchard from the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools and Alicia Sanborn from the Washington Unified School District. So let's take a look at your agenda for today. By the end of today's training, you'll be able to explain the purposes of CERS, list the data specific to each assessment in CERS, access data for summative and interim assessments, find the resources available to support the use of CERS, and get the answers to your questions. During our time together, we'll have several system demonstrations as well as guided exploration time where you'll be able to explore on your own. We'll also be taking a short break between most of the sections in today's training. Okay. Now that we have an understanding of what we're covering today, we want to know from all of you in the chat, and actually I'm going to turn the chat on so we cannot hear from you. Let's see here. Okay. All right. And we're going to want to know in the chat. Let's see. What do we want to know? What is one thing that you're hoping to learn about CERS today? That's a good thing to know. And so I just opened the chat for you so you can start putting your answers in there. So please type it into the chat now. We want to see what you want to know. Ooh, how to use the interim assessments. How to easily compare interim to summative data. More about interim assessment data. Everything. I like that. How to effectively use data and students, let me see, utilize data to make instructional informed decisions. That was exactly why we're here. Sue wants everything. All right, ELPAC scores. All right. Okay, so we've got a lot of good things there. Keep them coming for a little bit. Okay, so you can keep typing in for a little bit. I'll keep the chat open just for a little while longer. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass you along to our excellent trainers who will start our CERS overview. So let's go ahead and pass it off to Alicia. Alicia, it's all you.
All right. Thank you so much, Amy. Teachers are amazing. It is 3:30-ish on a Wednesday. You guys are just amazing. Thank you for being here with us. So let's start out. What is CERS? And CERS is that one-stop shop for your state assessment results, allows teachers, administrators to access detailed student performance information from summative CAASPP or the California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress, and the ELPAC, or the English Language Proficiency Assessments for California. We love acronyms in education, as well as interim assessments. CERS offers LEA staff the earliest access to the latest assessment data, as well as historical assessment data. We know that current and prior year student results, when combined with other student information, such as grades, classroom assignments, teacher observations, and more, can help to guide your instruction teachers and improve student learning. We would like to also point out that CERS was created with educator input, including California educators. Input from you as teachers was instrumental in developing CERS to ensure educators have the information they need about their students' progress. CERS was built with input from educators across the state to ensure it provides the information that you want to understand about your students' progress. California educators continue to help shape CERS by providing feedback that guides new features and improvements. Updates are made regularly, and the California Department of Education welcomes feedback at any time. We are excited in our demos today to show you some hot off the press updates. So results are available in CERS for the following summative assessments: the Smarter Balanced ELA in Mathematics, California Science Test, otherwise known as the CAST, California Alternate Assessments, or CAAs for ELA, Mathematics and Science, the California Spanish Assessment, or CSA, the summative ELPAC, and also the summative alternate ELPAC. In addition to storing the summative assessment results, CERS also houses individual and aggregate student results from the ELA, Math, Science, and ELPAC interims. Many people are here for those interims, my favorite. For the interim assessment results, there are additional features available in CERS, like the view item level information, individual student responses, what they put in the system, and the correct answer to each test item. We will be exploring more about these features later in this session with Teresa leading the way around interims. So who has access to CERS? All California Local Education Agency, or LEA, educators have access to CERS after they've been assigned a Test Operations Management System, or TOMS, account. The user role in TOMS determines the types of data and features that are available in CERS. Teachers have access to reports for students after students have been assigned to them in CERS by LEA or site coordinators. The process of assigning students to teachers is called rostering or managing student groups. If a teacher accesses CERS without having students rostered to them, you won't be able to see any data. When a teacher accesses CERS and has students rostered to them, they will see the groups of students in the assigned group section of CERS. I will be showing you what to look for when you enter CERS to know right away, teachers, whether you have students assigned to you on that homepage in our very first demo just here shortly. And for this training, we will be using that CERS Sandbox training tool Amy mentioned. So participants, you do not need to worry if you do not have students groups assigned to you today. So let's start with how we access CERS. You can access CERS through the CAASPP and ELPAC website. The link to the website is in your resource guide. You can access CERS one of two ways. First, you can select the CERS tile from the homepage and then select the CERS button or the CERS sandbox button. We will talk about the differences between the two in just a few slides. The other option is to select the System Links menu in the navigation bar and then select CERS. This will take you to that logon page for CERS, not the CERS sandbox. And once you've logged onto CERS or accessed the CERS sandbox, you will be on the home page. From the home page, you can access results two ways, by individual students and also by groups. As we talked about, your LEA or site administrator must assign groups to you based on the students that you have access to in your classrooms. You will know this step has been completed when you see those groups listed on the homepage under the Assigned Groups tab. The students listed in your assigned groups are the only students you have access to assessment results. You can search for these students individually or in the groups on this homepage. And let's start with the top of the page where you can search for an individual student. To do this, you must enter the student's statewide student identifier or SSID into that box. If the student test history report doesn't display, it could be that the SSID is incorrect or the user does not have permission to view that student's information, or there are no tests available for the student. To search by student group, you will select the group of students from the Assigned Groups tab. Your district or site administrator will assign those groups as mentioned based on your classroom roster or maybe other information. For example, if you're an elementary teacher, you might only have one group of students. And if you're a secondary teacher, you might have assigned multiple groups depending upon your class periods. And if you're a reading specialist or an intervention teacher on special assignment, you might have groups of students in different grade levels or even from different sites. The decision to which students are assigned and when they are assigned to teachers is made locally within the districts. Any questions about your assigned group should be directed to your administrators. Teachers also have a wonderful opportunity to create custom groups using their assigned groups of students. Customized groups allow teachers to view assessment results for a select group of students, tailored for their specific classroom needs. For example, an EL student needs support or tracking an intervention group's progress. This feature can be a powerful tool for teachers as they monitor progress for a set of selected students within their class. Please note that teachers, if you need to contact the site administrator because of your no assigned groups, they will be able to help you through that rostering process like we mentioned. To create a customized group, find the My Groups tab on the homepage and select the Create button. You can select students to be in the group by clicking on the name from the list of assigned students. You can also use the search box by typing in a student's name or SSID, and you have access to advanced filters to narrow down group options even more. The advanced filter options for creating custom groups are available by sorting by migrant status, English language acquisition status, primary language, race, and ethnicity. Creating and editing groups is very easy to do, and I'll show you in just a couple of moments here. And it is just the easiest way to which we can inform our classroom instruction teachers. So I can't wait to show you. All right. With all the features that CERS has to offer, it's a great way for staff to get familiar with those features. And it takes time to explore the system. But what about trainings like this, or any trainings that might be held locally, where you want to show the features of CERS while also keeping student data confidential? Well, there's this great training tool called the CERS Sandbox that allows staff to get familiar with the features of CERS in a non-secure environment. For all of the system demonstrations and explorations today, Teresa and I will be using the CERS Sandbox. The CERS Sandbox is a public website, so the URL can be shared with anyone interested in learning more about CERS. The Sandbox has all the same features and functions as that live CERS environment to which you use with your TOMS logon. The Sandbox does use fictitious data, and the interim assessment items in the CERS Sandbox are already publicly released sampled items. Specifically, the CERS sandbox does not have the test questions from the live and the secure interim assessments. This makes the sandbox a great tool for individual exploration and group training. There's no need to worry about keeping the items, result data, or even student information secure when using the sandbox. We also want to share two quick differences between the CERS sandbox and that live CERS environment. First, please note that a role needs to be chosen from the drop-down menu before entering the CERS sandbox. In your live CERS environment, teachers, you will not need to select that role. The live CERS environment uses the role or roles that have been assigned in TOMS by your coordinator or your administrator. Choosing a role in the sandbox can be helpful if you want to learn how CERS appears for different roles. Second, the purpose of the sandbox is for training on CERS features and functions, not for analyzing data. Some of the assessment rules, like alternate assessments for all, do not apply here. For example, you might see a student in the sandbox with results from an alternate assessment and a general assessment. Also, not every grade level in the sandbox will have every assessment accounted for. All right, so we're now going to do our first demo of this training. And just to reiterate, I will be using that sandbox. All right, so let me go ahead and minimize my presentation here. All right, and navigating on over to the CAASPP and ELPAC website. So over here on the right-hand side is the CERS California Educator Reporting System tile. Clicking there, I'm able to get to my CERS resources landing page. Over here on the left is that live CERS environment to which you need your TOMS user account. But over here is the sandbox. I'm going to go ahead and enter in. And I'm going to select a sample middle school role. I have to give my dad some love. He is in his last year teaching middle school. So shout out to all of you middle school teachers. You have my heart. Okay, so here on my landing page, I want to point out a couple of wonderful tools right at your fingertips within the system. So you have the user guide and the interpretive guide as well to help you really, dig in and do some analysis around what you are looking at. Over on the right-hand side is the My Reports, as well as the log in and out in your live environment, but also it exists for the sandbox to navigate between the different roles. Over here, you'll notice we can access the assessment results by that student view I mentioned, and then also those assigned groups. So remember, teachers, I said, if you log into your live environment and you do not see groups here, please contact your administrator as soon as possible. And one of those wonderful new features we talked about in the enhancements, before when we would hover over, we were not able to highlight and really see what we were looking at. Thank you, CDE and Smarter Balance, for helping us as we navigate using the system. I do first want to use a fictitious ID to show you just by that student individual view. So 31124 32186. And in your resource guide, when you do go in just a little bit, there are some fictitious SSIDs for you to use as well. So I'm going to go ahead, and of course I cannot type well. Let me type in one more time. 31234 32186. Perfect. See, I knew I had a typo there. All right, so once we're logged in, teachers, to that individual view, it's a very zoomed out view. You're able to look at different school years. You're able to drill down, look at different subjects, as well as summative and those interim assessments. So as I think with my teacher mindset, when I think of preparing for student study teams or individual IEPs for students, I can really get in and scroll down to find data quickly that I might need. I can even drill down and look at a little bit more granular data for students. I can find out dates of administration, that overall achievement level, like I can see in this view, but I can also see scale score error band information. I can navigate to different tabs to get even more information. But my favorite part of the individual student view is we could export to a CSV file to have all of that data in one spot, but the printable reports are amazing, and here's why. When you click a printable report, it's going to bring you to a student's individual report. I can again navigate between different years. I want to go ahead and choose summative and ELA in this case. We are able to, because the student is connected to us in our live environment within CalPATS, I can actually see what they accomplished in another district. When I leave show tested elsewhere, I'm going to be able to see how student performed in another LEA. So super powerful. When I go to click create report, it brings me to that my report section that I mentioned up at the top. Teachers, please keep in mind when you are going to build these reports for individual students, the more information, a little bit longer it takes. I only did select one assessment type and one school year for the student. So you'll notice it is already complete. Coming over here on the left for the student's name, I can download the report data to get to this beautiful PDF. It will automatically download onto your device. I went ahead and I uploaded it just so we can look at it a little bigger together. So one of those enhancements that I mentioned that was occurring within the CERS system is the accessibility around how we as teachers are able to interpret and look at the information in the reports. They also made every assessment look as similar as it could, those summative and the interim assessments, to make them uniform in our ability to view these reports. An individual student report, I do want to point out, teachers, is different than a student score report to which our families get at home or through our portals that they have access to. Is really a tool for us as educators to be able to use and interpret information for students. So you'll notice up here I had selected summative assessment, and I did want to pull out the ELA assessment specifically. When I scroll down, I have this beautiful bar graph to which I can see the various scale score ranges and those achievement levels. So as I think with my teacher mindset, when I think of a student sitting next to me interpreting this graph alongside of me in a goal setting opportunity, if I'm a student who's right here in the lower range of a standard met, I can show them just what it takes to get to that next achievement level, or for our students who are not quite there yet. We are able to scroll down and look at how students performed in the matching colors around what that looks like for student achievement. And my favorite part, for an ISR, otherwise known as an individual student report, we can see, teachers, what purpose a student was assigned in the previous administration year. So in this student example, they were given the opinion task, and I can see for evidence, organization, and purpose, as well as conventions, how students scored on their performance task. If a student received a condition code, it will also be noted here. So teachers, please keep this in mind, because remember, condition code students earn 0 out of the total, which means for their performance task, they did not receive a score, which then hurts their overall achievement level. So very powerful individual student reports and being able to interpret student data. Okay. So I do want to go ahead and show you from that My Reports. When I downloaded the PDF, I just click this home button and it will bring me back to my landing page. So those assigned groups I mentioned will be here for you. I do just want to click them really quick just so you see what that looks like. In the next demo, I will navigate and I will show you all the bells and whistles, I promise. But I want to point out up here how you see printable reports. Just like I printed for that one student using the SSID, I can click here. I can pull my whole student group and download those individual student reports. So using my former example, summative ELA, to be able to see how they did on the performance task, I would just click create report, and it's going to go right back to my my report section. All right, so last but not least, want to go back to the homepage and show you as teachers how you could build those individual groups. So that second tab, the My Groups tab, you're going to want to come over here and click that Create button. So I'm in the middle school teacher's role for the sandbox, but you can simply navigate between your groups assigned in this way. Remember, you can type a student's name and they will pop up as well. But let's say I want to, across my class blocks, I want to combine one student group of my English learners, my multilingual learners. All I do here using the filter, I can add all the students to the right. I could come to my next class block. I can again add all the students on the right. And my last class block, I do not have any students there. I think I already had selected them, maybe. I did. So from here, I would want to maybe look at how my students are performing across all subjects. And I want to call it my ML group. And then when I click save, I'm going to be right back to that My Groups landing page. Remember, here's your assigned groups, here's my groups. But when I click that group I just created, I am only looking at my multilingual learners and their performance. So I wanted to show you just really quick how you would be able to easily create those groups. Thinking small groups for students, you can randomly click, knowing that this is my small group 1 students. So I can easily look and inform my instruction as to what's happening for different student groups. So super powerful tool. Okay, enough of me. It is now your turn. So we're gonna go ahead and navigate on back to the presentation so you can jump on in. But I do wanna check with Amy. Are we still okay for the 7 minutes to explore?
Yep, we're looking good.
All right, perfect. So the instructions and the link to the sandbox, just a friendly reminder, are in your resource guide. And you'll want to access the sandbox using the teacher lever role, just like I showed. And in order to view those assigned groups and customized groups, you must use one of the teacher's roles in the sandbox if your live environment does not have those students rostered to you. Many of you are probably wanting to go right into that live environment, and that's awesome. But just in case, you do have the sandbox. And consider completing one or all of the following tasks, depending upon how ambitious you are. Search results for an individual student or by a group. Create that printable report for a student, that ISR. Export a CSV file for a group of student results. And even create a custom group, what I just showed you last. And as you explore, please put your questions into the Q&A box, and we'll respond to as many as we can during the next Q&A. And remember, since this is a sandbox, the data will look different when you log into your actual CERS environment. And also, because you're using a sandbox, have fun and click away. You can't break anything. Alrighty, so 7 minutes. We will see you back here we'll return at 4:05. All right, so I'm going to welcome you back. My math skills were a little off, but that's okay. I hope you had a great time and had a few new discoveries about CERS. So this is the time that we're going to offer just a short break, and then when we come back, we'll do a Q&A. So let's go ahead and leave 5 minutes for break, and we will see you back shortly. We'll see you back at 4:08. All righty, everyone. Welcome back. Hopefully you're able to get to that text message or the email that you were hoping to. All right, time for some Q&A. We want to make sure we pause for some questions. And Amy, I've been seeing a lot of things going on in the Q&A. What are some of those questions?
All right, we have a few questions here for you. Let's see which one to start with. Okay, let me scroll up. All right, the first one I have is if our LEA uses an API to upload groups, will it override a custom group that a teacher may make in their own CERS?
Well, that's a great question. No, it will not override the custom groups. So I modeled how to build, a couple of those custom groups in my demo. The API will not. The API helps with the rostering of students to you in that assigned group, but you as a teacher in creating those custom groups, it will not be overridden.
Okay, and next we have are custom groups removed at the end of the school year the same way that student groups are?
Yes, they are. So with each summer, at the end of the year, our CERS and all of the platforms in relationship to CERS, they go through kind of a refresh and everything does exit the system. And then with the new year, all the processes for rostering and creating those new groups has to be put into effect for the districts in whether it's the API or through the rostering process for teachers.
All right, great. And the next one says, Can I pull a single student's test results for all subjects?
Yes, absolutely. So in my demo, I pulled for just ELA and summative assessment because I really wanted to show what happens in an individual student report to see the performance task data for a student. But you're able to select all. You can see summative and also interim assessment results throughout the whole year. So really wonderful tool, and all subjects too. So great questions.
And I wanted to just give a little follow-up to that to make sure that they know that that's different than the individual students, or that's different than the student score reports that are sent home to families. So you can pull all of that information, but it's not the same thing as the SSR, or the student score reports.
Yes, that is correct. The ISRs, the individual student reports, are meant for educators, for us, in informing as teachers and administrators, different practices that we need to in helping students achieve.
Great. Okay, let's see. Um,
I did see one that came up around, are you able to print those individual student reports in groups? Yes, absolutely. So in the next part of the demo, I'll show again how you do that with that printable reports option, because it is a very great tool to be able to download for your class as a whole, either all summative and interim, or just focusing on certain subjects.
And I had one more here in my group that said, how can I see scores for my students that I had last year?
Mhm. So that would also be through the rostering process, but teachers, you would need to go to your coordinators, your administrators, and ask that they can upload through the rostering process your roster from last year, and then you would be able to see those students in a group as well.
All right, great. I think that that might be all of that we have time for in this section. So why don't we,
Perfect.
good.
All right, we'll keep moving along. All right, so our next section, as promised, is around the summative assessment results in CERS, and all the bells and whistles. All right, so in this part of the presentation, we're going to go over the summative results for CAASPP, which contains the Smarter Balanced Summative Assessments for ELA and Math, California Science Test, California Alternate Assessments, or CAAs, for ELA, Math, and Science, and the California Spanish Assessment. We will also cover results for the ELPAC, which contains the summative ELPAC and the summative alternate ELPAC. We want to mention that one benefit of CERS is that educators can view some of the student summative results prior to the public release of aggregate assessment data, allowing them the ability to analyze student performance in a timely manner following assessments. For example, the public release of aggregate results for some summative assessments occurs in the fall, but CERS allows educators to view those results in late May or June. In our district, we were able to see those scores trickling into the system before our teachers left last year. There was so much excitement for their access to view those results. So easy to get there once they start trickling in. All right, so for all of the summative assessments, you will see the grade level assessed, the average scale score for the group, number of students in the results, student score, distribution by overall achievement or performance level, individual student reports, or those ISRs I already showed you, and additional detailed information. So for Smarter Balance, ELA and Mathematics, additional information includes lexile and quantile measures, composite claims, target reports, as well as those ELA writing trait scores. And for CAST, additional information includes domain level information, and for ELPAC, information includes those composites and also the domain level information views. All right, so with that, it's already time for the second demo. Just to reiterate, I'll be using that CERS sandbox, and then after, you will have some exploration time on your own as well. So want to go ahead and get on over and get started. So I'm going to go back just to show you one more time how we got to the sandbox. So the CAASPP and ELPAC website, the title for CERS, California Educator Reporting System, and over here is that sandbox tile. I'm going to go ahead and continue to use the sample middle school role within the sandbox. I'm going to be brought right to that landing page here. And I'm going to go ahead and select my grade 7 group here. So as promised, just to reiterate around printing for my group as a whole, you're going to want to come over here to the printable reports. You can select all types of assessments, summative and interims. You could drill down to a specific subject or leaving all. And when you create the report, that will be for this entire group of students. So remember, it might take a little bit longer than that first one that I showed you in downloading. So from here, once you've selected your group, you're also able to actually navigate between your different groups with this dropdown as well versus on that landing page. You will always see the most recent assessment selected here on the left, where you notice this left tab as you log in. So it's perfect. Grade 7 summative ELPAC is the first one that I wanted to show you. So we have the average scale score here in the center, 1528, with that error band here. Anytime you're in the CERS system and you see these eyes, please click there. It will give you more information in how to interpret the data. You have your levels of 4, 3, 2, and 1 for the summative ELPAC. You see these beautiful color bar graphs and the student score distributions to match the levels. Anytime you'd like to view, not in percent views, you're able to actually look at number views of students. So just a simple toggle back and forth. Right now, we are looking at overall student achievement. When I scroll down, I'm able to see the results by student view. So clicking here, just like I modeled before with an SSID, we can actually print a report for this specific assessment for an individual student. Using the headers here, you can sort and view the data as you would like to analyze by using the features. Like to point out another beautiful enhancement, and Teresa will go into this in just a little bit, but the tools for teachers button and how we can get to various activities to help support our instruction teachers in alignment to the different assessments that we're viewing data for. So before it was a little tricky to see, but even better now to know that we're going to be able to get to those resources in an easier way. So thank you, Smarter Balance and CDE. When we navigate over those rows again, you can see the highlighting makes it easier on the eyes to view the data. But I do want to scroll back up here and navigate on over to the composite view for the summative ELPAC. So we have the oral language as well as the written language composite views. Please remember, oral language is listening and speaking, and the written language is reading and writing. We still get the scale score and the error band for each of the composites on each side. We get the distribution of achievement levels for those composites. And even when I scroll down to look at individual student views, I can sort looking at the data as I would like for those views for individual students with their scale scores in mind. One last part around the summative ELPAC I'd like to point out is the domain views here. So clicking the domain view, scrolling down, you're able to see for listening, speaking, reading, and writing, the distribution of how students scored here with our key of beginning to develop in the light red, somewhat to moderately developed in the yellow, and then blue well developed to be in alignment to our English language development standards in the state of California. When I scroll down, I am able to see and look at the different domains. I can sort and view just like I did with the other analysis views. And also a new feature that was not before in the CERS environment, we're able to actually see if a student was not tested for a specific domain or if they were exempted per their IEP. So another enhancement that is brought to us by CDE and Smarter Balance to be able to interpret the data as teachers to know how to support our students and their individual needs. All right, so I do want to though point out one last thing. Just like I showed you with the last example in the group view, you can export data at any time by just a simple clicking of a button to a CSV file, depending upon the view that you're wanting to look at. So a little different than our printable reports and those student reports. The next assessment I do want to model for you and show you the features is that of the ELA summative assessment. So clicking here, and deselecting my summative ELPAC, can navigate out of there, I now have my grade 7 ELA summative assessment. So I get my total student results here, just like we saw with summative ELPAC, as well as my scale score in our error band here. I can see my achievement levels of standard exceeded, met, nearly met, and not met for the ELA summative assessment, student score distribution as well. Right now, I am viewing the overall student results. When I scroll down, I have that results by student view here. Again, I can use the features within the system to sort and view as I would like. But one of the features of the ELA summative assessment is that of the writing trait scores I mentioned. And that allows you to see 4 the different genres assigned to your students of argumentative, explanatory, informational, narrative, and opinion. You are able to see the average of the scores for students that were assigned the task. So for evidence elaboration category, organization, purpose, and conventions, you can see the average for each of those areas for each of the different genres students were assigned. Again, we can export right here, just a click of a button to be able to do some analysis, maybe as we consider coming together, teachers with our teams, to see if there are any trends and how we can have implications around our instruction as we move forward with different components, different units, modules. All right. But one other thing I'd like to show you in the drop down, actually 2 more things, is the target report next. Oh my goodness, this one is a favorite. So for our claims and targets, we're actually able to, for our student groups, see how students performed as a group. So for example, for target 1 in read literary text, we can see 435 students tested in our group that they actually did better for this target in comparison to the rest of the assessment. And then also they were above the standard of the 3. So students did really well identifying key details. But when I scroll down and I look at other targets, for example, target 4, reasoning and evidence, I can see that my students did similar with this target in comparison to the rest of the test. And then they were near the standard for this target. So very powerful as we think of our PLCs, teachers coming together to really do some analysis in regards to the standards that are aligned to these targets and how we can support our student achievement. Please, teachers, keep in mind, if you do come within your group in your live environment and you do not see any information here for the target report, you do have to have 30 or more students in the group. And so there's some ways around that when you think of your different ways to create groups on that front page. I'll go back before I exit just to remind us there might be a workaround if you have multiple signed groups. Scrolling down, one last thing I'd like to show you for the ELA summative is the Lexile report. So we can again sort out and use the features to look at student data points. Very powerful as we think about small groups for students and how we are giving grade level text throughout our units and modules. So very helpful tool, and just exporting that, you have it as a file to be able to use for analysis. Okay, the last one I want to show you, I'm going to have to change over to grade 8 to show you the California Assessment for Science Tests, otherwise known as the CAASPP. So friendly reminders, teachers, that the CAASPP is administered in grades 5, 8, and then it is a local decision at the high school. So now I have my grade 8 CAASPP summative here. I have my overall scores here, total student results, the distribution of achievement levels, that skill score, error band, just like we saw with the ELPAC and ELA. When I scroll down, I can look at my individual student views and sort out in this way, look at their skill scores. And when we navigate on up to the next tab for domain, I am able to see how students did with the different life sciences, physical sciences, and earth and space sciences domains within the CAASPP assessment. I'm also able to see how students performed in regards to the key of below, near, and above with the colors. So again, very helpful as we try to plan for instruction with upcoming units and modules that cover the different domain topics within the California Science Test. All right, so one more thing though, I mentioned on that home page, remember when we created those My Groups over here? When we think about the target report for ELA Summative, if you do have different student groups, you could combine them together to then have that 30 or more. So that is a workaround to where we could look at and interpret the data. So just want to make sure you knew that that was there for you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to head back into the PowerPoint because it is going to be your turn. Enough of me. And I just want to double check, Amy, are we still okay with the time
We
set for
are
them
right
to
on
explore?
track.
Oh, good, yay. All right.
Exactly.
All right, perfect. All right, so you will have 7 minutes to explore. The instructions and a link to the sandbox are in your resource guide. You'll want to access using your teacher level role. And consider completing part or all of the exploration depending upon how ambitious you'd like to be. I mean, it is 4:30 almost on a Wednesday. So for the summative ELPAC, you could find the composites and domain results. For the CAASPP, the achievement levels by domains. For the Smarter Balanced ELA, find the writing trait scores or the target reports. And as you explore, like last time, please keep putting your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll respond to as many as we can during the Q&A that will follow the exploration time. And remember, it is a sandbox. You cannot break it. And it will look a little different than your live CERS environment. Alrighty, so let's see here. We will be back at 4:33. Enjoy. Alrighty, so I'm going to invite you back. Sure hope that you had a wonderful time exploring, maybe in your own environment within CERS or the CERS sandbox. All right, so we have actually a really neat opportunity for some personal reflection where we have two specific questions we want you to reflect on. And those questions are, how do I plan to use summative data alongside other data to inform my instructional next steps? And how can I utilize the writing data in CERS to help inform my instructional decisions for next steps in student learning? So in thinking what I showed you with the individual student reports, and then also seeing the writing extended response averages for your students, depending upon the genre. All right, so time for Q&A. Miss Amy, what do we have here?
Okay, well, we have a question about the target reports that you were showing. It says, are there target reports for the IABs?
No, there are not target reports for the interim assessments. So those are for the summative assessments. I did show, teachers in your group level view, you'd be able to see those if you have 30 students or more in your group. So for example, if you only have 28 kiddos in your class, you would not be able to see the target reports. You could, however, ask your coordinator to be able to generate for your grade level as a whole to be able to see those target reports because they have, the more groups that are together in being able to access and see how students are performing across those targets and claims. So teachers, if that's you or you have the smaller class size, no need to fear. Go to your coordinators and they can, in their views, generate a view. That is if you have, the 30 students or more in your site level amongst all the groups.
All right, and I'm going to ask a couple of basic level questions, and I'm going to kind of smush them together. So how can I get access to CERS? We had a couple of folks that were having a hard time getting in. And then also, do they need CERS access to use the sandbox?
Okay, great questions. So for the sandbox, you do not need any specific logons or anything like that. You can just navigate over to the website like I've been modeling and just choose a role that you'd like to see, that teacher role. So as Teresa comes on next and goes into the land of interims, you can follow along in the CERS sandbox, without any necessary roles assigned to you. In your live environment, though, your coordinators or your administrators would need to assign you a role for you to be able to log into CERS. And then also, again, the part of students being rostered to you, that would need to happen as well for you to see your student groups and your student data.
Great, thank you. All right, and then Are the summative target reports not yet available for some districts or schools?
No, they are available already, but again, you might not see that information, teachers, if you have the less than 30 students. So if you have a class of 20 that took the summative assessment last year, you wouldn't be able to see the target report. So that might be what is happening, teachers, if you're not seeing that target report listed.
All right, let's see. And how do you run the report that shows the student score for each criteria on the performance task on the SBAC? The rubric shows that the students are graded on task and purpose, evidence and elaboration, etc. How do I run a report that shows their scores for each criteria?
Mhm. So just want to go ahead and mention from the first demo with the individual student reports where I looked at the individual student and I downloaded that PDF and I modeled and talked through that. You were able to see the individual students' performance across those areas. So what they were assigned, what genre, how they did for evidence elaboration, purpose. So you're able to see for individual students. In my other part of the demo where I was looking at the group view of the writing traits in the drop down, that is where you're able to see the average scores of your students as a whole and what they were assigned. So for example, the argumentative tab, it will tell you the averages of each of the categories and how students progressed. It won't give you the individual, but it will give you the overall for the group for the kids that were assigned that purpose and genre. If you want to know for the specific students, you'll have to go and generate those individual student reports, the ISRs.
All right. I think we have time for one more here, and I think this one actually is going to lead us into our next section. What's the best way to choose activities from tools for teachers based on the student data in CERS?
You are right. That is the perfect segue into our next area. As Teresa models in her interims, she'll show you what that looks like in accessing tools for teachers. We're able to use it for summative assessments as well as teachers, instructional resources. But when she shows that in her demo, all the bells will click for us. So great question. All right, Teresa, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to pass it on over to you, my friend.
Awesome. Thank you, Alicia. Can you hear me okay? Awesome. Thank you so much for sticking with us on this afternoon. I am Teresa Blanchard. I am from the Office of the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools. It is a pleasure to be here with our teachers today, digging into CERS. And our next session or section of the session will cover interim assessment data in CERS. Here, CERS allows you to view student responses and key distractors, as well as view specific items for the interim assessments that we are administering in our classrooms. So we're going to go over the purpose and use of interim assessments before we jump into the data available. The interim assessments can inform and support teaching and learning in multiple ways. The intended purpose is to evaluate student knowledge and skills during the year. Now, interim assessments can be used flexibly as both assessments for learning and of learning. Now, what do we mean by that? Interim assessments can be administered in a standardized manner or a non-standardized manner. An example of a standardized manner is when the interim assessment is administered as a formal individual assessment after a unit of instruction. Now, this is an example of an assessment of learning. Now, examples of non-standardized manners of administration are when a teacher displays an interim assessment for a whole class or a small group to discuss, or uses the interim assessment kind of with students to teach and to practice. Now, these examples of interim assessments are used for learning. This is important to understand that the interim assessments can be used flexibly, and they give teachers like you options to use them as assessments for learning and of learning throughout the school year. Now, when teachers administer interim assessments, they are asked whether they are being administered in a standardized or non-standardized manner, so you can keep track of that in CERS as you're analyzing data. Now, CERS will note the administration of standardized and non-standardized, but results are displayed the same, so there's no change in the data that that is available. It is the teacher that can consider the manner of administration when you're viewing and analyzing your results. Use of the interim assessments can also improve student familiarity with different types of test items, and we're going to see some of those during our live demo today. It helps them get comfortable with the test delivery system, the interface, and the accessibility resources that are available. Becoming familiar with the interims can lead to powerful professional learning for educators. The resources available to support the interim assessments allow teachers to become more familiar themselves with the content being assessed, the ways in which students are assessed, and the rubrics or scoring criteria that are used to evaluate the responses. And we'll try to highlight some of those again in our next demo. And we want to give one more reminder that interim assessment materials must be kept secure and are not to be shared in any way. Interim assessments are available all year long. However, the interim assessments for the new school year usually roll over in late summer. There is a really helpful lookup tool that lists all of the interim assessments that are available. So we don't have to list them all here on the slide. The link actually for the interim lookup tool is in your resource guide. For the 25-26 school year, there are over 150 ELA interim assessments, over 110 math interim assessments, 18 CAASPP interim assessments, and 56 ELPAC interim assessments. We keep adding to the bank every year, so thank you again to our colleagues at the state level to help make that happen. We also want to note that the interim assessments are administered on the computer, but they are not computer adaptive. They include a fixed set of items, and every student gets the same items for these interim assessments. There's one exception to the computer-based setup, which we will mention on the ELPAC slide. And lastly, some important interim kind of tips. Some interim assessments contain items that do require hand scoring. The lookup tool will list how many hand scoring items that are required for each interim assessment. So if you're just getting started with interims, maybe you can start with some that don't require hand scoring. That's just a kind of a helpful tip to get used to the interim assessments that we have to offer. This information is important to know because when an assessment has a hand scored item, the item will need to be scored locally and submitted before you can view assessment results in CERS. Now, since there isn't time to list all of the interim assessments, we're going to dig into how they're organized. For Smarter Balanced for ELA and Math, they're organized by the content they assess. The Interim Comprehensive Assessments, or ICAs, test the same content and report scores on the same scale as the summative assessments. Now, with the new Smarter Balanced adjusted form, the ICAs will actually take longer than the summative to administer as they use the full form summative blueprints. Now, they can be administered up to 3 times a year, and each ICA includes 1 or more items that do require hand scoring. Now, the interim assessment blocks, or IABs, focus on smaller sets of related concepts and provide more detailed information for instructional purposes. They generally have from 6 to 18 items and can be administered within 1 class period. They could be administered in an unlimited number of times, but it is important to note that there is currently only 1 form for each IAB, so students would experience and have to answer the same items if the assessment is given more than 1 time. And we have also focused IABs, or interim assessment blocks. That's also known as our FIABs. They assess even smaller chunks of content, generally 1 to 3 assessment targets, and they have about 10 to 15 items focused on very specific concepts. Now, CAASPP interim assessments are organized in 2 ways. In elementary, they are organized by grade level performance expectations. So CAASPP IAs, or interim assessments for grades 3, 4, and 5, assess all 3 science domains: earth and space sciences, life sciences, and physical sciences. In middle school and in high school, the CAASPP interim assessments are organized by science domain. So there are 3 middle school and 3 high school CAASPP interim assessments, and they each assess 1 science domain. Each interim will include 1 performance task with a constructed response that, again, will require hand scoring. There are 2 interim assessment forms for each of these, and so for example, 2 grade 3 interim assessments, 2 middle school earth and space science interim assessments, and 2 versions for each of the assessments that we just listed. Now, the ELPAC interim assessments are organized by domain and grade level or grade span, a little bit different from our CAASPP assessments. The ELPAC has an interim assessment for each domain: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. For the following grade levels or grade spans: kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, grade span 3 through 5, grade span 6 through 8, grade span 9 and 10, and grade span 11 and 12. Speaking and writing are locally hand scored by educators. So again, keep that in mind if you choose to use our ELPAC interim assessments. And reading and listening are computer scored. The ELPAC interim assessments are administered online to students as a linear test, except for kindergarten through grade 2 writing domain, which, like the summative ELPAC, is administered on paper. Each interim includes about half the items on the summative ELPAC, with all summative task types covered between either interim 1 and interim 2. This means there are 2 forms and 2 versions available for each interim assessment. Now, for all interim assessments, we will see information similar to that of the summative assessments, including the grade level assessed, average score for the group, number of students in the results, the student score distribution by level, and individual student results. And we'll point these out during our upcoming live demo. However, we also get additional information which is specific only to the interim assessments. And this is what really makes interim assessments so powerful for us as teachers. You're going to get an item viewer. You have access to item information that will break down standard, claim, and depth of knowledge. We can look at key and distractor analysis, which shows an answer key that displays the number or percent of students that have chosen each answer choice. You'll have rubric and exemplar information, student responses to items, and links to instructional resources for the Smarter Balanced IEBs and Focused IEBs, plus any local resources uploaded by your coordinator or administrator in a district resources link. It is important to note that interim assessments results are for the fully machine scored interims should show up in CERS within 20 minutes. But again, for any interim assessments that require hand scoring, results will show in CERS after all local hand scoring is completed. Now, what you've all been waiting for, I appreciate Alicia, doing such a great job with the live demos, because this is hopefully where you can get some ideas on how to better navigate our CERS system and our CERS environment. We are going to use the CERS sandbox just to again remind you that this is fictitious student data. After this, you will have some time to do an exploration of CERS on your own before we move on to the next section. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch over to my CERS website. I can actually go into the CERS sandbox here. Again, if you already have an account and you want to log into the live environment, this is where you're going to enter. But we're going to enter the CERS sandbox. And I'm going to actually try to get through all of our teacher roles here just to give you a quick little demo of each and highlight a few of our interim assessments. So I'm going to enter the sandbox as a teacher first at the elementary level, the sample elementary school, and I'm going to hit enter sandbox. We're going to actually look at a grade 5 English language arts interim assessment. So I'm going to select grade 5 and it's going to take me to my home page here and my results view as well. So we have the plus sign that we can expand so we can find the interim assessment that we administered. I said it was the Read Literary Text interim assessment that I have just recently administered. I can minimize by closing that X, and it's going to pull up my results just below those assessments that I can select. I'm going to actually click on all the different sessions that I administered, and you see as I click on those, it does change the number of results that are available. And I have 71 total results that I can view. We can see that 23% were above standard, 45% near standard, 32% below standard, just like we saw with the student score distribution for some of our summative assessments that Alicia demoed. I can also toggle from percent to number if I really want to drill down into how many students scored at each of those levels. Now we will automatically get a results by view. That's the default here for our results view. If for some reason it doesn't pop up, you can condense and show the results. So just wanted to make sure I point that out to you. Now the default is alphabetical by last name, but we can actually go ahead and sort by scale score. I can click it once and it will go from descending to ascending for my scale score. Or I can filter again by reporting category or any of these headings up here on our table. If I want to know more information about the reporting category or any of these terms, I can click on the little eye icon and it talks about the student scores of each interim assessment block or IAB, excuse me, and FIAB are assigned to one of three reporting categories. So we're looking at below standard, near standard, above standard. So right now I have it sorted from below standard to above standard. If I want to actually look at, and this is the best part in my opinion, my results by item, I can click that as a second choice for my results, and it gives me the default all my items in order. So there were 20 questions on this assessment. I love to start with the full credit sort. So we're going to come here and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more so you can see where I'm clicking. My full credit is going to tell me how many, and I can click on this, students in the group who earned the maximum number of points available for a particular test item. So I see we really struggled as a group on question number 8. Now, we have our number of students here. If I want to toggle back to percent, I can also view that in a percent form or format. I want to know, okay, what does question 8 look like? And maybe I can look at individual students to see how many students got a 0. And I can create maybe a little group for intervention or reteaching for this question or this concept. We can also toggle over and look at the item itself in the item viewer tab. So we can see that this is a detail from a cuisine and etiquette text that you can actually see. It's the split screen in the test delivery system. It gives us the key. The answer is D to be able to get that full credit response. Now, I can also switch over to the rubric or the item information, and it does tell me what target that we have that is linked to this question, the claim information, the item difficulty. So I know that some of you were interested in learning more maybe about some of these questions, and the item information tab will give you that. Now, if I wanted to see individual students, now let's see, Johnny did not answer the question correct. He didn't get the full credit. I can actually see that he selected A here by looking at the student points and responses. But an even better way to see kind of our frequently selected answers on some of these questions, for any of the questions that were multiple choice, we have a key distractor analysis view, and that's the last one. I clicked that really fast. Let me show you where I clicked. The key distractor analysis drop down here. It's the last choice on the results view menu for interim assessments. And so these are the questions. They took out some of the other questions that don't have the multiple choice component. Again, I go straight for the full credit. I click it once and it actually gives me the results for you know, which questions were most frequently missed and which questions maybe got the most credit for my students. Now we have, let's see, a couple questions here. It looks like question 18. I have the green boxes tell me these are the correct answers. So 52% of my class that took the test out of the 71 students, they chose C, and 72% of my students chose F. So F was a pretty obvious answer, but maybe C was not something that they chose. So we can actually look at this question in the item viewer. I can see what the question was, and this is very tricky, especially for English learners. Choose the 2 pairs of more exact words for that the student could use in place of the underlined words, and they have to read the passage and choose 2 pairs. So that's 4 different choices and 4 different words to think about. And we don't always think about, maybe some of these other distractors. We have a 27% of our students actually chose B as well. So neat and plain versus the correct answers of crispy and tasty and delicious and sweet. So just a little bit of information that we can gather in using this key distractor analysis. Now, the great thing that we have built into CERS for our interim assessments is this Tools for Teachers shortcut here. So if I want more information on how I can support my students after looking at this data, I can actually click into Tools for Teachers, and it takes me directly to an interim connections playlist where, if we need to practice or I need to pull a group, I can actually work with my students who scored below or near and work on some of these maybe key details. We just saw a question like that was frequently and most of our students struggled with based on that key distractor analysis. So really great, exciting ways to use that feature. Now, I do want to quickly see if I can go into our middle school grades and pull a couple more assessments for interims. We want to look at one of the ELPAC interims for listening in grade 8. And I'm going to click on grade 8. I'm going to show you a little shortcut because I loved finding this. I find little extra buttons and things that our team is constantly adding. The View IBI dashboard, if you click there, you can actually get a filtered view of your interim assessments for your grade level. So I'm looking for our listening 2, and I can check that box and then view assessments. So it takes me directly to that without having to expand and select or deselect some of those other assessments. Now we have 30 students that took the test. We've got the student score distribution. I'm going to dig right in and go straight to the good stuff, right? The results by item. I can again sort by full credit. I can go ahead and see for, let's see, only 47% of my class got full credit or got a point for question 5. Let's take a look at it. We can click over to the item viewer. I can take a look and see, okay, they're going to have to listen to a conversation and then choose the activity that the students did together. Now, the answer is B, play soccer. But when you listen to this passage or you review it possibly with your students, there are a lot of things that are going to be thrown out in the conversation. And they talk about the soccer coach and talking to them. And there's like pronouns that are being used, like our soccer coach, that doesn't directly explicitly say that they play soccer together. So there's a little bit of inference that students need. The rubric and exemplar and item information, again, is available for each of these items, and we can drill down into that. Now we can also select, I would love to show you a CAST assessment if we have a few moments here. So let me see, let me go back to that interim dashboard. It's sometimes a little easier for me to find. Oh, there it is right here, middle school CAST I Life Sciences. So we're going to view the assessments, and we can also, again, view those items, view the key distractors, look at full credit, and drill down into those questions that might be a little bit tricky. So like question 13, we have a multiple select. So there's 2 correct answers, and we can take a look at some of those key distractors that way. The Tools for Teachers is available as a direct link, and it could take you to the homepage where you can search for key phrases for science or for ELPAC. I would recommend for that listening passage, we can search for listening or ELPAC to give us some examples of things that we can use in the classroom with our students for reteaching. So I know I wanted to give you a chance to see a math interim, but I don't want to have all the fun going into the demo. I would love for you to have a chance to explore the sandbox and view your interim assessment results either by item, view interim assessment results by key and distractor analysis, or explore the instructional resources and Tools for Teachers links. And we are going to give you a few minutes here.
Maybe about
Amy,
2 minutes. We're running a little behind schedule, so maybe
okay,
a quick one, like 2 minutes, and come back at
perfect.
5:10.
Now the steps are in your resource guide if you need help with accessing and repeating some of those exploration that we just demoed. So have fun, and we'll see you back in 2 minutes.
It was a fast 2 minutes, Teresa.
I know, I was trying to decide if we were going to have enough time to do that reflection coming up here. I hate to interrupt their sandbox exploration, but maybe a quick reflection on how might you use then the following results view on your interim assessment views in CERS when we view results, by student or by item or key distractor analysis. And I know that there were some questions that came up, Amy. So as we're putting in some reflections, are there any questions that you would like to review?
Yeah, there's a question about IEPs. I have students with IEPs. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, so we have a lot of students that have IEPs that we serve, but we can create maybe a student group with our students with IEPs and kind of keep track of students, but personally identifiable information about our students can only be shared or redisclosed for specific purposes under our FERPA or Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. So in compliance with all federal and state, statutes, regulations, we don't necessarily have a filter for CERS with our student level data on special education status, foster and homeless status, free and reduced lunch, or free and reduced price meal information. That's additionally protected from redisclosure under FERPA. So you're not going to see some of those filters, but you will have, your English learner filters and some other race and ethnicity filters, as well as grade levels. And again, you can create some of those custom groups if you would like.
Great. Okay, here's one. If you assign an FIAB brief right, does it show what his response would be?
Yes, so you can score that with the teacher hand scoring system and see what the responses are. So that's one way to see it. But you can also look in the student responses and see some of those drop downs for the student points and responses. So there's a couple different ways to see students' responses for the brief right.
Right. We used to receive a list of the IABs and FIABs that showed us which ones have hand scored items. Does that exist anymore?
Great question. So we have evolved into an amazing lookup tool. It's the interim assessment lookup tool. It is in your resource guide, and it does have filters to show you can actually toggle on or off the hand scored items. You can find the tool on the website that is in your resource guide and use filters. Again, select your grade level, and you can include or exclude those hand scored items. If you're just getting started, again, that might be good to select maybe an assessment that doesn't have a hand scored items, because we know that does take time to get used to hand scoring and coming back into CERS to view those results.
Okay, and one real quick one. Are there rules about how to use or not use this interim assessment data?
Yes, so per education code, and we have the number here, 60642.7b, our results from our interim assessments shall not be used for any high stakes purposes, including but not limited to teacher and other school staff evaluation, accountability, pupil grade promotion or retention, graduation, course or class placement, identification for gifted or talented education, reclassification of English learners, or identification as an individual with exceptional needs. So we can use the IA data or interim assessment data for maybe small group instruction or reteaching, pacing adjustments in your classroom, whatever you can control with your instruction. But there are some high stakes purposes that education code says we cannot use the results for.
Great. I think that that's it for now, and we should get this show on the road. A few minutes
Okay,
left.
I know. It's the afternoon after you guys have been teaching all day. So thank you for, sticking with us and answering or asking great questions. I hope we've answered them. We have one last topic before we wrap up, and that is CERS resources to support you as you get started with CERS. So we have resources that we want to call your attention to in the CERS user guide. It explains all the features and functions of CERS. It does have a companion, the CERS interpretive guide, which is designed to help educators understand assessment results and reports in CERS. And I think Alicia pointed that out during one of the first demos. Now, together we explored the CERS sandbox. So you should be very familiar with that, and you can share with other educators to learn about CERS. Again, that's your just fictitious student data that we can use for trainings, but we're not sharing specific students that, that we serve. You will use the live environment for exploring your own student data. There are handy quick reference guides which walk you step by step through various CERS functions, such as how to view results by school, how to view individual student results, and how to view writing trait scores. Now, there are some CERS videos that we do want to mention. First is the creating groups and the California Educator reporting system video. We also want to remind you that the introduction to CERS trainings were recorded as a series of microlearning videos, and those are available to watch flexibly whenever you kind of want to tackle new topics as you get more comfortable with CERS. You can watch the entire training all the way through, or just select specific topics without having to view all of the videos or the full training. And lastly, you can also visit the CERS resources webpage for more detailed information and additional resources, such as a link to the CERS SIS to CERS, or the Student Information System to CERS integration page, and the data dictionary for the California Educator reporting system. Now, one last reminder, we want you to go back to your sites and start looking at student scores in CERS as you administer your assessments, or you look at some assessment data from spring. If you don't see data in CERS, that is because, or likely because, students have not been rostered or assigned to you. Now, teacher level users can only see data in CERS for students that have been rostered to them. So please, please reach out to your site administrator and talk to them about, when they updated their TOMS user accounts. Did they give you a TOMS account? And do you have students rostered to you in the system? Now, additionally, if your student group needs to be changed, for example, if students need to be added or names need to be corrected, new rosters need to be loaded into the system, this has to be done by the person who manages CERS locally in your site or district. Usually it's the CAASPP coordinator or other administrators. Now, to close our learning time, we ask that you share in the chat box. Our producer Amy, will open that up so you can start sending in your answers. We'd love for you to consider what you've experienced in this professional learning that you plan to share back at your site or use in your classroom. Now, when you are ready, please feel free to type and add that into the chat box so we can see what you're taking away today. Give you a moment to type in your responses. We really appreciate you taking the afternoon to join us and learn a little bit more about the CERS system. We've got Courtney saying just learning how to access individual student scores for the performance tasks. Awesome. Be asking my admin to give me access. Yes, that's the first step and the necessary step to be able to view your results. I appreciate learning more about delving into interim assessment data, such as results by item. Awesome. I love that feature, the results by item and the key distractor is super helpful to pinpoint some instructional next steps. And keep those reflections coming. We really do, appreciate you taking time. Again, we do have another introduction to CERS for teachers training coming up and some other additional trainings coming up that we want to share. So there's going to be another live presentation of today's training geared more towards teachers on October 9th. So if you have a colleague that you think would really benefit from hearing this information or practicing in the sandbox with us, that will be on October 9th from 3:30 to 5:30. We also want to call your attention to the introduction to CERS training for a different CERS audience. This might be for your site or district CAASPP and ELPAC coordinators that are going to be helping with rostering and getting everybody connected. This is the introduction to CERS for test coordinators and administrators training. It's designed for users in CERS who have an administrator role or are responsible for managing staff access to CERS. The next training for that audience will take place on October 7th from 8:30 to 11:30. So feel free to share those opportunities with them. And I'm just going to go back and see there's a couple more things in the chat. Appreciate learning more about delving in the interim data. So there's some rostering, encouraging my colleagues to attend the training coming up. Thank you for sharing those opportunities. Now, the last part of today's training, we just want to say thank you. We've come to the end of our journey today. We hope you found some useful information on how to use the California Educator Reporting System, or CERS. Now, please give us feedback. There's going to be a post-training evaluation that's going to pop up. Please take a couple minutes to complete that. It shouldn't take you more than about 3 minutes. When you close the Zoom, you'll see that link pop up in your browser. And to close, on behalf of the CDE, the Sacramento County of Education, and your training team, and Alicia, my co-presenter, we thank you for spending time with us today. Thank you for being here, and let us know if we can support you in any way.
Thank you, everyone. See you next time.